Hello, today is Thursday, March 14th, 2024. I'm Tony Mangino from TC2, and this is Staying Connected. On today's episode, we're going to discuss fixed wireless access, or FWA, and how it has become a success story for our enterprise clients. Today, I'm joined by TC2's Technology Director, David Lee, and Deb Bowling, a partner at LB3. Thanks for joining me today, Dave and Deb. While we have covered specific fixed wireless technologies in past podcasts, such as LEO satellite services, private 5G, and CBRS, we haven't covered FWA as a dedicated topic in over a year or so. So to start, Dave, why don't you provide our listeners with some background on what enterprise clients need to know about FWA services?
Good afternoon, Tony. Let me start with a brief overview. As you mentioned, fixed wireless access is a wireless technology and system that uses radio frequency to provide local access and internet access to homes and enterprises. By the way, I'm not defining FWA using the term broadband, as that has been equated in business circles or the minds of our enterprise customers as not high speed, or at least fluctuations in contracted speeds, and not really reliable. FWA uses radio spectrum to connect two fixed points, such as a FWA device or appliance in a facility and the corresponding radio unit or system, such as located at a network cell tower or other radio baseband location. Typically, the spectrum used are the familiar frequencies used in 4G LTE and 5G from wireless carriers. Since we covered private 5G applications for warehouses and campuses in prior podcasts, we will discuss terrestrial FWA as it applies to connectivity in cities and as a wide area network or WAN service.
Thanks, Dave. Can you expand on the categories of terrestrial FWA that are a hot topic?
Sure, Tony. At a high level, FWA systems typically consist of a base station connected to a fixed network and subscriber units spread out over a wide area. The base station uses radio waves to communicate with the subscriber units, allowing business users and consumers to connect to the larger internet and access high-speed data services. FWA is an alternative method of providing wireless local access and internet access to enterprises without the need for physical connections like DSL over copper, cable, or fiber. With some of the current and newer FWA technologies, this will enable traditional network operators, ISPs, and municipalities to provide high-speed internet service to ex-urban and rural areas, mining operations, and other use cases. And by high speed, I mean a minimum of 100 megabits downlink and 20 megabits uplink speed as required by the U.S. government BEAD, or Broadband Equity Access and Deployment Program.
Interesting. Deb, what is this BEAD program and how can it help our enterprise clients?
Hey, Tony, thank you. It's great to be here. BEAD is an NTIA-sponsored program that is part of the federal 2021 Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. It provides over $42 billion to all 50 states, D.C., and to the U.S. territories. Why? To expand high-speed internet access to, quote, unserved locations with no internet access and to, quote, underserved locations with less than the 100 megabits per second download and or less than the 20 megabits per second upload speed Dave mentioned. BEAD funds planning, infrastructure deployment, and adoption programs for ISPs offering speeds of at least 100 meg down and 20 meg up. Enterprises should benefit from BEAD as the ISPs deploy infrastructure to support this requirement. In the past, the cost of deploying infrastructure in rural and industrial locations was too high. Deployment has become affordable to ISPs with BEAD and numerous state and local funding subsidies.
Deb, how will BEAD impact FWA?
Good question, Tony. Many of the network telcos and ISPs with licensed spectrum or a combination of licensed and unlicensed spectrum are eligible for BEAD funding. This is especially true for ISPs that cover rural, industrial, or poorer areas. ISPs using current FWA technology can achieve a positive return on investment in around 3 months. According to a report by the Fiber Broadband Association, ISP fiber to the home can cost $7,000 to $10,000 per premise passed, whereas ISP FWA costs are estimated at $1,000 per premise passed. So the economic case for FWA deployment is less than 10% compared to fiber deployments. FWA ISPs also have a time to market advantage. It only takes about 6 months to deploy. With FWA, there is no digging, no construction permit requirements, and no rights-of-way challenges. In addition, the FWA industry is expected to grow at a CAGR of 35% in the next 6 years. To sum it up, enterprises can expect to see significant FWA coverage and bandwidth capabilities soon, if not already available.
Thanks, Deb. Dave, what FWA technologies can our enterprise clients expect to see to achieve this?
Tony, the network telcos and ISPs are using equipment based on the standards of 5G technology and radio spectrum when it was introduced 5+ years ago. As we know, the standards and frequency band allocations for 4G, 5G, and future deployments of 5G Advanced and 6G are governed by the ITU, part of the UN. In addition, 5G has not been as successful in finding a killer app or use case that justifies the immense expense of deploying it ubiquitously until now. With the deployments of more FWA access across the U.S. and territories supported by its great economics and BEAD funding, 5G is or will soon become a success story. Moreover, current deployments of 5G in the U.S. and many parts of the world still haven't achieved all the capabilities in the 5G standard because wireless providers have not actually deployed what's called 5G standalone or SA. The wireless carriers are still using their legacy 4G cores. What this means is that while the speeds are greater than 4G LTE due to the access to greater spectrum, the full capabilities of 5G still have not been realized yet.
Can you provide some examples of the 5G standalone relevant to FWA?
Sure, Tony. I believe our listeners will recall these buzzwords that I'm about to call out as they've been published years ago as the promise of 5G, but as I mentioned, still not deployed ubiquitously. Without going into details for each one, examples of 5G standalone capabilities include network slicing, ultra-low latency, better support for real-time traffic, bandwidth that is more reliable, better security, scaling, high levels of automation, and support for massive machine-to-machine communications. The latter example of M2M supports Internet of Things, 5G reduced capability including RedCap and eRedCap devices, where the 5G radio units are much less complex, deliver lower data rates, and is much more less expensive compared to the 5G we observe today, which is a one-size-fits-all, highest bandwidth and longest range competition among the wireless carriers. The lower data rates offered by 5G RedCap and eRedCap will be appropriate for use cases where a lower cost and a battery-friendly IoT device or similar device needs to be supported.
Deb, any closing thoughts?
Dave's focus on 5G for FWA makes sense. BEAD funding designates only licensed wireless networks, including cellular and CBRS, or a combination of licensed and unlicensed wireless networks as providing, quote, reliable broadband. These licenses are primarily held by incumbent telcos. Enterprises may require the reliability of licensed spectrum, but unless NTIA changes the rules, enterprises will not be given the option of fully unlicensed FWA networks that may be faster to market and/or less expensive. FWA benefits are coming. They may not come in the next year because city and county internet initiatives remain underway, winners may not have been chosen, and where they have been chosen, their contracts may not have been signed. It's only after this FWA implementation will begin. Be patient.
Okay, great stuff. Thank you, Deb and David. It appears FWA is making 5G relevant by filling gaps and supporting new use cases. If you'd like to learn more about these services or you have other ICT needs, you can contact Dave, Deb, or me, or any of our LB3 and TC2 colleagues by giving us a call or shooting us an email. You can also stay up to date by subscribing to Staying Connected, by checking out our websites, and by following us on LinkedIn.